All right. So good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here this morning for this amazing training we are about to embark on or in. My name is Lisa Anzoldi. I am the VP of Communications for ATDCFL, and I will be facilitating our session today with our amazing speaker who I just learned so much about in the last half hour. So excited. So before I toss it to her, I'm going to share my screen and share some things that ATDCFL is doing so you know what's happening with our chapter. So here we go. All right. So the first thing I want to share is that we actually have a new Cptd certification, which is a certified professional in talent and development. And we have a virtual study group going on. If you're interested in that, we are having an information session on Tuesday, July 28th. Seats are limited, so if it's something that you're interested in, check out our website. We have the link there where you can register. The cohort is going to run from August 4th to the 20th. And our very own Zizo is going to be running that. He's our president-elect. Also, within our chapter, we have tons of events coming up. We have webinars and digital encounters that you can be a part of. We have our SIGs, which are super interesting groups, one in e-learning right now, and we also have another one for job hunters. We also have our other digital encounters, like tomorrow we have one going on, the Art and Science of Crafting Killer Facilitator Guides that you might want to check out. We also have events on interviewing skills, which is very helpful if you're looking for a job. And a certification SIG, another super interesting group. So check out our events page. We have tons of stuff in there and we're adding more every single day. And then lastly, I'd like to point your attention to our blog, which I hold personally because I do write it every month, but it does give you a lot of information about what is going on in our chapter. So I just actually published our June blog, and it kind of gives you just an overview of what happened, welcoming new members, what's going on in our chapter. And we'd like to hear from you. What do you like? What do you want to hear? What do you want to know about? Let us know. And we'd like to make that happen. So that is our little synopsis of what's going on in our chapter. And now I'm going to get ready to toss it to our fabulous presenter. She has worked in L&D for over 2 decades, and she's currently a project manager at an international law firm. She speaks at gamification and L&D events all across the US and in Canada. And without further ado, I'd like to present Valary Oleinik.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here because I know this is like one of the best chapters ever. So probably the best, right? I don't know. Yeah.
We got a clap there.
There we go. And I see we got some answers over here in the chat. So people are answering the question about what they fixed. I appreciate that you're already jumping in there.
We have a storyline trigger.
I know.
A throw pillow. I like that. A hallway closet. I need help with my hallway closet. Maybe I'll ask for help with that. Floors. Oh, a broken dog collar. Oh my gosh.
I know. Look at all this stuff. And I love the fact.
Great.
I love the fact that you acknowledge like some of these are learning things. Some of these were just, professional things, personal things, whatever. That's great. We are ready. You guys are ready for today, I can tell. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a second. Share some slides. There we go.
I just want to let everybody know, Valerie, before you begin, that if you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to jump right in on the chat. Or if you even want to come off your mic and you want to, say something, feel free to. We're making this a very interactive session, so you can get the most out of the session. Towards the end of our session, about 10 minutes before the end, I will be including a link to our ATD survey. If you could please fill it out, letting us know how you felt about today's session. And then in addition, I believe Valerie has some goodies she's going to give you at the end, but you have to hang in there to get the link to those goodies.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, absolutely. Very informal today. We got a beautiful size group today, so we can feel free to jump in, jump out, come on camera, don't come on camera, talk. I welcome all of it, totally. And I'm not one of those people that says wait till the end to ask your questions. Let's ask them when they come up. So as you know, because you signed up, today we're going to talk about Macgyvering our training. And we're going to talk about what that means and how we can create raving fans. So I first feel like I have to issue a little bit of a warning. My sessions are not your typical webinar. I'm not going to just sit here and talk at you for an hour because I don't think that's the best way for any of us to be learning. So this is going to be interactive. I love that you're already in the chat. We're going to do several activities as we go along, but I will tell you that my goal today is, as much as, you know, Alex and I talked recently off the cuff about fun and everything, and having fun is great. But what I really hope is that each of you leave here today with at least one actionable item, some new idea that you're like, yeah, I'm going to go try that, or I'm going to go check that out, or I'm going to experiment, or something. So that's my goal. If you leave here today and you say, yeah, that was fun, that was good, then I kind of don't think I won. I kind of think that's a little bit of a fail for me. So that's what I'm shooting for. I want you to get results. I want you to leave here with something of value to you. Yes, I say yes. Okay, so first thing before we dive in, I want you to get your supplies together because you're going to need a couple of things to get the most out of this experience. We are going to use the chat, but unlike some other sessions where they tell you to silence your cell phone and put it away and all that stuff, I'm going to tell you to get your cell phone because we're going to use them in just a minute. If you don't have your cell phone handy, or if you're already watching this on a cell phone or whatever, you can use any web-enabled device. You can use another browser window, whatever, to do what we're going to do in just a moment. I would also encourage you to get something to write on, pens, paper, your tablet, whatever you want. No rules there. Something to write with. Again, whatever you got, pen, crayon, some lipstick and a shade you should never have purchased and you don't have a use for, whatever. So number 4 is a sense of humor. So we're not going to take ourselves dreadfully seriously today. There's going to be a lot of creative stuff going on today. So let's approach it all with a sense of humor. We're among friends. Let's have a little fun with that, and an open mind. So that's kind of my supply list I would encourage you to start out the day with. So first thing we're going to do is a mission I'm going to call Why Macgyver. And before I tell you why I think Macgyver, I am going to open up a quick little poll. But this poll, you're going to need your cell phone for. So I'm going to switch here over to a poll. It's in Mentimeter. So you're just going to go to menti.com. and you're going to enter that code, that 6-digit code, 991346. So I'll give you a second to get your phone, to get in there, to place your vote. There's just going to be a couple of quick questions, and then we'll move on from there. So again, you just go to menti.com. and then you enter that 6-digit code. Okay, so far we got some people who have heard of Macgyver. Okay, they know who he is. This is looking good. This is usually the answer I get because people either knew who it was already or they looked it up before they came to the session because they're like, what's this about? So awesome. Okay, so we at least have some frame of reference. We know who Macgyver is. But the next thing we're going to do is, if I can get this to advance to the next one. There we go. A couple of years ago, in fact, Macgyver had become so iconic, the character had become so iconic that the Oxford English Dictionary decided that it's actually a verb. This is actually, you can actually use the verb to Macgyver. So just in case we're not clear on what the meaning was, you're using things in innovative ways, basically. So they have a very formal definition there because it's the Oxford English Dictionary, and you would expect that. But I also like this definition by the Urban Dictionary. And again, this is being a little cranky today. There we go. The Urban Dictionary says that Macgyver is someone who can jumpstart a truck with a cactus. Okay, and I think if you've seen any of the episodes of Macgyver, you probably would agree with that he came up with some really crazy solutions. And right now, in particular, that's what a lot of us are having to do, is come up with really crazy solutions to things because we're finding ourselves in situations that we could not have planned for. So I think it's appropriate that we all channel a little bit of Macgyver's spirit. Okay. Next question. I also said in the title of this session that we could create raving fans. So when you hear me say create raving fans, what comes to mind? And you can type in a couple of words, a phrase, whatever comes to mind. And let's see what words pop up when we talk about having raving fans, because I want to make sure we're all heading in the direction that I provide you with the most valuable content for what you're expecting. Engagement, the magic word, which I was hoping would appear somewhere in somebody's thing. Anybody else have any ideas of what raving fans mean? Let's see. Okay, being able to Macgyver things, exactly. Great, look at this. We're getting some people talking. This is awesome. Yeah, you want people to follow you. You want people to love you. That's one of the things that, sometimes we don't think about when we're designing things. About, are we building engagement, not just between the learner and the content, but between the learner and the instructor, or between the various members of the cohort or whatever. So yeah, all these things are great. So, and yeah, engagement and all these things. And we're going to talk about engagement a little bit because it sometimes gets used, the word gets used, but we don't really define what we mean by it. And so we're going to talk later about how important it is to really clearly define what the problem is we're trying to solve. So for one person, creating raving fans might simply mean that they come back to the next session. You want repeat customers, so to speak. For another person, raving fans might mean that they're very active. Like right now, I love the fact that you're being very active, interacting with the questions that I'm giving you. So there's all sorts of different ways that you might be looking to create engagement. Perfect. So the last question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, there's a little slider. How creative would you rate yourself? 1 being, yeah, not so much, and 10 being, man, I got this. I am so creative. Da Vinci got nothing on me. I am like off the charts creative, okay? And you notice I did not put a 0. The scale does not go from 0, and there's a very specific reason for that, and that is that even if you don't consider yourself creative, I promise you, every single one of us as human beings are creative. We all have creative abilities. Some of us have different types of abilities, which is where I think things get confusing because we confuse creativity with being artistic. I can't draw. I'm not a good artist in that way, but I would definitely say I'm creative. So I think we need to sometimes, kind of like engagement with creativity, we need to really think about what we mean and explore it. It's also a skill that anybody can learn, anybody can get better at with practice. So we're going to do a little practice today. So if you didn't rate yourself very high, and this group actually, you all came in right dead on the number that I normally get, and I've done this activity in different types of workshops countless times, and 6.5 is about where people come in, because I usually get a couple of people that say, yep, I'm totally creative. I get a couple of people that are like, I do not have a creative bone in my body. And then I get a few that are in that mid-range. So it's kind of interesting that completely non-scientific. I have not standardized my methodologies and things, but just having done similar activities, I sometimes change the scale a little bit, so I can't really compare. And this is something else to think about, is Sometimes we just need to make a little tiny tweak to something we're doing. So instead of it always being strongly agree, strongly disagree, standard Likert scale, standard things, does it always have to be that way? So I'm always looking for little places to make a little change, and you'd be surprised how much more engagement you get with that. Partially because it's unexpected, and the novelty factor captures people's attention, which is a first step in the engagement process. Because if you don't get their attention, you never can get to engagement, right? Because where do you go from there if you have if you don't have their attention? So yay all of you for participating. I'm going to switch back over now to my other slides for a second. All right, and talk a little bit more about, I kind of told you why Macgyver, because it's about the creative spirit. It's about problem solving and figuring things out in innovative ways. But there's a few other pieces to it besides that. So the first thing is about I'm going to call them micro wins. And this is something that I think we could do a lot better with. The faster you can get your audience to take an action, a little win, a little mini commitment, a little mini win or action of any type, the more likely it's going to be that they will take the next action and the next action and the next one. So you notice, before we even started, I asked you a very simple question. I just asked you what you had fixed. Now, I could have said, oh, say hi, tell us where you're from. I could have asked you the same question that you probably have heard in many other webinars. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to immediately start to get your mindset focused on the topic today. And the topic today was going to be about creative problem solving and thinking about things like that and engagement. So I gave you a question that prompted that sort of thought process instead of just some random question. So as much as possible, you want people to take small actions, and you also want to immerse them in whatever it is that you're going to be learning about as quickly as possible. So you want to create, you don't want to take them completely out of their work context, but you want to create that learning space. And sometimes you want the context to be very real world. Sometimes you do need to abstract it a little bit. Sometimes based on the topic, you might need, for emotional safety, so to speak, you might need to create a little abstraction, and it's okay to have that immersion be a little more, in games, they call it the magic circle. If we're talking about a movie, you suspend your disbelief. That's okay to get people immersed into getting them focused on what we're talking about today. So think about that a little bit as you're designing, particularly about the very beginning, how you're welcoming people in to whatever this experience is that you're going to have for them, whether it is online, in person, because that'll happen at some point, or more likely what's going to be, I think part of the future is going to be more of a hybrid situation. And that is one of the reasons that I actually had you use Mentimeter this morning. There's many tools we could have used, but something that happens sometimes, and again, you're always going to want to ask questions because each situation is going to be unique. But what happens sometimes with the chat, if you have particularly a very large group of people, is the chat can start to get very confusing and disorganized, and this group is having a side conversation about where they're going to go to lunch, and this one's asking a question, trying to ask a question of the presenter, and another person is still talking about a topic from 5 minutes ago because that was really interesting to them. And so the chat can start to get a little confusing in terms of using it for the learning itself. So sometimes you're going to want to use the chat. Sometimes you're going to want to focus people's attention very intentionally. So what I did was I said, okay, we're going to do this poll that brings everyone's attention to that screen. People could still chat. I didn't tell you couldn't, but I want the attention over here because this is where we need to focus right this minute. So sometimes it's a matter of you know, directing traffic, so to speak, and directing people's attention and getting them to look where you want them to look. Kind of magician-like, where that, you know, don't look over here, look over here. Also, it's sort of the webinar version of if you have printed documents, white space. Printed documents need white space so the eyes have a place to rest. It's easier to understand the material because I can clearly see what I'm supposed to be looking at. You want to give people that same experience when you're doing online experiences as well, like we're doing today. So hopefully that was helpful as an example of sort of seeing the difference there. And again, you're going to have to pick and choose what's appropriate for your specific situation, and it's going to vary case by case. All right. Let's stop. I just want to take a peek in the chat, see if I missed anything. I know Lisanne's going to jump in though and help me, so I'm just going to not worry too much until I see her beautiful face pop back in. And there she is. Look at that.
Yeah, we
Yay.
are all good in the chat.
That's what
Yes.
it looks like.
Anybody
Yay.
have anything they wanna throw in there while we're taking this little mini break here? Any
Yeah.
questions? Anything that came to mind when you just heard what Valerie just said about that? No?
No,
Good?
that's okay.
All
That's
right.
okay.
Awesome.
That's okay. That's all right. All right. So another piece of why I chose the sort of Macgyver theme, and this session we're doing today is sort of a part of a larger program. So I sort of picked out a few things. And what's really kind of ironic is when Alex first asked me about this, he saw I was doing this as an in-person event. He said, hey, you want to try do this as a virtual event? And I was like, yeah, that sounds interesting. Let's try that. Little did we know at that point that pretty much everything was going to become a virtual event. So that was kind of interesting. But one of the other reasons I chose the Macgyver sort of metaphor for this series of workshops is that it's a story, and story is so important to helping people to learn something. It's one of the easiest, when I'm helping people to gamify things, one of the easiest, not simple, but easy things to do is to say, let's see if we can provide a narrative to help move the learners through the experience so that it's clear, whether it's an actual story or just sort of more of a thematic consistency and sort of get them from point A to point B. It can be very powerful. So the brain loves stories. We learn through story. So anytime you can do that. So the Macgyver story, part of it, every episode is what a friend of mine affectionately calls the pocket dump. There's some scene in the episode where he's in some weird situation and he just starts pulling stuff out of his pockets and putting it on the table and looking around the room and finding random objects. And so that's what I mean when I say pocket dump, is just looking at all the pieces you have. And this is something I encourage people to do with their learning materials. It's like sometimes we get very stuck doing the same thing the same way because we know how to do it and it's efficient and it's whatever, but it's not always going to get us the best solution. So I'm going to encourage you to start looking around and think about what resources you have, because the other problem is going to be, and I'll tell you a story in just a minute, sometimes the world flips upside down and the resources you had yesterday are gone. And you have to figure out how to use the resources you now have to do whatever the thing is. So I'll tell you a little bit about that story more in a second. But just to do a quick activity with this one, we're going to help Macgyver for a second, because apparently at some point he ran into one of the bad guys, he gets conked on the head, and he's having some problems with his pocket dump. He's having trouble figuring out how to use different objects. So this is where you need your paper and your writing implement of choice. So we are going to help Macgyver. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take about 2 minutes, and I am going to ask you to write down as many uses for a glass, just a glass, regular, like drinking glass. 2 minutes, as many different ideas for uses for that glass as you can come up with. And my encouragement is to defer judgment. There are no right or wrong answers here. We're going for quantity. We just want to think wild, crazy thoughts. We want to really think just big, audacious thoughts, okay? So we got the rules now. The rules are, we got a couple of minutes. I'll put a little timer on the screen, and you're going to write down as many uses for a glass as you can, and go. And if we were in person, I would hear scribbling like crazy right now, because I know everybody is writing down a ton of ideas, a ton of ideas. So we're going to just give it a second. I'm going to take
Valerie, would you like anyone to share it on the chat window, or you just
Oh,
want them to write it down right now?
we are definitely going to do that right now.
Okay.
I think we should just let, I don't want any spoilers yet. So
Okay.
let's just see. We're going to give them, we got our little timer on the screen.
I can hear the scribbles right now.
It looks like it's spelling something on the screen too. That's kind of weird.
Ooh.
But so we're going to let the timer run. We're almost to the minute mark. So keep scribbling. Again, there are no limitations here. Defer judgment. Think about that glass. You might have one sitting next to you. Look at it. What can I do with that? Think about all the crazy, crazy, crazy things you could do. And when time's up, first thing we're going to do is we're going to count up how many ideas you came up with. And we're almost there. We're in the home stretch. We're finishing up. Got about 15 seconds.
I love this timer.
It would not be a Macgyver thing if we didn't have some duct tape. So
Love it.
So we got some duct tape. It's probably one thing you can't use a glass for. I don't think you could tape anything with it, but hey, who knows? I don't know.
Maybe.
Never know. Somebody might come up with a way. Actually, I just thought of one maybe. All right. So pencils down, or I feel like it's like Iron Chef or something, knives down. All right. So, okay. So I want you to take a quick look and count up how many ideas you came up with, and just put that in the chat first. Just tell me how many crazy or not crazy. They're probably good ideas. Not necessarily.
Oh, nine.
Okay. Ooh.
5.
Okay.
11.
Ooh. Okay. Okay. And I'll give them a couple more seconds. Somebody might have a really long list that they have to count. Oh my goodness.
16.
Okay. I think
5.
Jay's kind of blown it out of the park. 16. Okay, this is looking good. Okay, so of your list, I want you to pick what you think is probably the wildest, craziest one on the list, and put that one in. So we got some pretty high numbers here. Some pretty high numbers here.
I mean, I even think 5 is a lot.
It's
right.
Again, this is really awesome. Awesome.
A drawing tool, Alex says. A mini step stool. Oh, I like the mini step stool.
I love it. I love it.
Knocking out tool. Oh, yes. Very important.
Oh,
drawing tool.
Look at this.
Catching a bug. Ah.
And you all only gave yourself a 6.5 when I asked you how creative you were. See, you are all extremely creative.
See, we have breaking it up for a sharp object to cut something. Yes. Yes.
When I said you couldn't tape something, I thought of that. If you broke it, you could use it like a tack.
Yeah.
You could possibly, whatever. Exactly. So
target practice.
This is a simple activity that you could do anytime. It's a really good activity to just do periodically. Look around the room, find a random object. If you have you live with other people, let the kid or the spouse or the whoever, ask them to go find some random object, and you do it. It's a really powerful creative technique that that really gets you thinking differently. It really does. And I love the fact that, who was it? I think it was Brigida broke the glass. Yes. And split it up into pieces, because sometimes we limit our thinking and we go, oh, it's a glass, it has to stay like this. but does it have to stay like that? And we do the same things when we design things. And I use the glass specifically because a glass is a template. And we do that in learning all the time. We develop templates and then we confine ourselves. And we forget that a template, it's like when you're learning to color in a coloring book and there's lines and you're told stay inside the lines, don't color outside the lines. But even if you follow that rule of staying inside the lines, there's all these different colors you could use. There's all these different things you could use to still stretch the boundaries of that sort of idea. So thank you for doing this. And I think, if I'm not correct, at least I can help me. I think Jay had the most answers.
Jay said he had the most
16.
answers, but he said some of them were
kind of overlapping.
Yeah, overlapping.
It's okay. I'm still going to give it to him. Write Jay's name down for me, because at the end, I'm going to have a little something extra for being sort of the. We'll award him the winner. The winner of the glass contest. I don't know. I didn't call it anything. I don't know. Whatever it's called. All right.
Excellent.
Right. So before we sort of switch gears a little bit, the glass challenge. There we go. Thank you. And I use different objects in different sessions. But like I said, because we were a learning community today, and the template question does come up a lot when I talk to people. They're like, oh, but I can't do that because we use templates. Oh, but I can't do that because we have a standard format. And I say, okay, but a template is a container. So let's think about using that container to its greatest effect for the learners. So, all right. Next thing, so we've already debriefed that a little bit. Next thing, I want to give you one other creative problem-solving tool that you may find helpful when you are trying to, the first one was sort of, we're just trying to come up with ideas. The next one is maybe you already have a situation and you're trying to improve it, fix it, something like that. You can use a technique called Scamper. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of this, but it's just each of the letters stands for a verb that will help you through this process. And again, it's just to help you sort of brainstorm. It's sort of to help you to generate some fresh ideas. That's all this is about. So basically what it stands for is substitute. So think about things you could substitute one for another to fix the situation or change it. Combine. Does the glass need to be combined with something else to solve whatever the problem is that you're doing or you're trying to fix? Adapt. Is this glass like something else that I am familiar with and I could adapt somehow what I know about this or how I use this to this other situation? So how can I adapt my thinking? How can I modify something? Can I make it bigger, smaller, heavier, lighter, different color, whatever? How can I modify it to make it better serve the purpose? In the textbooks, they'll call this one put it to another use, but I like them all to be one word, so I'm going to say repurpose. I'm going to cheat a little bit. So can you use it for a different purpose? So that was kind of what we did in the activity a moment ago. Can you eliminate something? Can you remove part of a process? Can you streamline something? Can you eliminate? This is a big one when you're working with SMEs. They want to put everything in the kitchen sink, in everything, right? And you have to pare it down. You have to eliminate things and say, no, no, no. This is the core stuff we need right now. So sometimes eliminating something or reversing something. And again, sometimes you have to work backwards to go forwards. Like, okay, what's the end result I want? How am I going to get there? Or sometimes it's a matter of rearranging or resequencing things to reverse items to improve the situation. So that's another technique that you can use when you're kind of sitting there and you're kind of going, okay, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to make this better, fix it, change it, whatever? You can use this Scamper technique. Okay. Any questions about that before I'm going to kind of switch gears just a little bit? Looking good. I think we're still good over in the chat. Awesome. Okay. So when this, I mentioned earlier that, when I was first asked to do this, I was doing it as an in-person session. And this is all kind of ironic in hindsight, because one of the activities that I had people do was I gave them a scenario where there was a tech blackout and a virus had infected the network. So this is kind of weird. But so as you might remember from Macgyver, he had his arch nemesis Murdoch. So I had given them this scenario about the network being infected, and they had to, these were, the first audience I did this for was a group of IT trainers that work in the legal space. So they, I'm just going to politely say, because I have worked in the industry for many, many years, they're not the most progressive thinkers sometimes. So they kind of stick with the tried and true. We had some trainers who I thought were going to cry or retire when we said we can't have classroom training anymore because rents in New York City are really expensive and we had to take away all the classrooms. So this was a group that was not used to thinking creatively. And I basically said, I know you're technical trainers and you live your life in the IT space, but for today, you're going to have to come up with a no or low tech solution. So anytime you can take anything you've worked on already, I would encourage you, think about something that you have designed recently or facilitated recently, even participated in recently, and think about what you would do if suddenly you had to do it differently. So what if it was an in-person session, how would you adapt it to make it a virtual session? And think about those things and prepare yourself, because that's a big part of this whole creativity thing, is you're preparing yourself for future events. You're making yourself more resilient. You're making yourself, you're practicing the skills. We spend a lot of time practicing skills with the tools and learning the technology and all those things, but we sometimes don't spend as much time practicing how to prepare ourselves to use the tools in innovative ways or different ways or replacements for things, and thinking about the impact of being able to use different tools in different settings. So again, going back to the beginning when we did the Mentimeter poll, another reason that I use that one, and I use it frequently, is because I've had to present in the past in this hybrid environment, which I think is in many ways the worst of both worlds, because if I'm standing in front of people and then I'm giving attention to the camera, I feel like I'm neglecting the people in the room and vice versa. And then it's very hard to have conversations. So again, if I can find a shared space to focus their attention, so whether they're sitting in the room with their cell phone or they're virtual with a cell phone, I can give them one place where they can all come together for the conversation. So again, thinking about, we're going to have to start thinking about the learning spaces in different ways. So I encourage you to think about it now before it becomes a big issue for you. So I don't know, in the chat, can you just let me know, have any of you already had this experience of having to suddenly convert something overnight? Okay, so yeah, so I'm getting yes, exactly what's going on right now. Yeah, from in-person to virtual. Yeah. Okay, so this is perfect. So that's the world that so many people that I'm working with in the past few months have been finding themselves in. We went from the in-person to tech everywhere. Everything was tech. Everything was online. And what do? So I'll tell you a quick story about a very dear friend of mine who several months ago on a Friday, and I know it was a Friday, on a Friday morning contacted me, and he said, on Monday, I have a 5-day leadership class starting, and the class uses the Lego Serious Play model. The problem was they had this process problem with the company, and they want to build some models, and they wanted to work out the bottlenecks, and they wanted to rework the processes. And that's what this 5-day experience was going to be about. And this was Friday. And he said, and I just got an email that says, as of Monday, all employees of the company have to work remotely. So between Friday and Monday, he had to figure out how to convert his 5-day session into a virtual experience. Okay, so what I'm going to give you now is I'm going to kind of walk you through what I call the game plan model, which is a game plan framework, which is what I use in a larger scale when I help people to gamify things, but it can be used beyond that. So whether or not you have ever heard of gamification, care about gamification, want to think about gamification, this same model will work. But that's why it's called the game plan, is because it originated in this space of working with people in gamification. So this is basically what he and I walked through, and in approximately an hour, we rapidly prototyped something for him to start with. We decided if we could get day one figured out, that was good enough. That was where we had to start, because obviously everybody understood that the world had just flipped upside down and people suddenly were working at home, and we knew it was going to take much longer to present content, to go through various things and adapt and whatever. These were IT professionals primarily, so the technology part was not a problem for them so much, and some of them might have had experience working at home, but this was definitely a situation where there was a lot of stress in terms of how to make sure that they got the value they needed and that they were able to solve the problem that they were trying to solve. Okay, so I want you to think about this metaphor we're going to start with of a target. And we're trying to solve a problem. And if we come up with the right solution, that is right there in the middle of we hit the bullseye and we solve the problem. So what we're going to break it down into is the game plan is 4 pieces. First of all, we have to identify very clearly what the goals are. So what is the problem we're trying to solve? And in my friend's case, part of the problem was, how do I do this remotely when it's supposed to be in person? But we had to step back and we said, okay, but in terms of the actual project, what is the end result we need the people to end up with? So you really have to be clear on that, because sometimes when we're converting things from virtual to back and forth between in-person and virtual, we sometimes overstate the problems and the differences that we have to deal with in the different spaces. Sometimes we make that a barrier to ourselves in ways it doesn't need to be. And I'll show you that in a second. The second piece was you have to know your audience extremely well, as much as possible. And again, this is not just needs analysis and demographics and all that stuff, but we're talking about at the motivation level. Why would they care about this? What will motivate them? What would engage them? Different people are going to be engaged by different things. I had an interesting conversation in an interview a couple of months ago, kind of like the one I did with Alex. It was very off the cuff. It was unscripted. I had no idea what she was going to ask. And we were talking about the use of characters, something we talked about earlier today. And I'm going to ask you to answer this question too. Think about this. You can have, basically, if you're going to use characters in your learning event to help your learners, to help your audience, you have 3 major things you can do. First of all, you can create a character that you need to help, that the learner has to go through this learning process, learn some skills, whatever, so they can help this other character. So we'll call that the good character. Like it's a good guy. You have to help the good guy. Or the character in your learning could be a guide. The character could be sort of neutral, neither good nor evil, just sort of a guide that's helping you go through the process. Or the character in your scenario could be the bad guy, could be the Murdoch, it could be the boss fight. It could be you have to overcome, you have to learn these things so that you can defeat the evil villain or whatever. So think about that. Like, which one do you think would be best to use in any given situation? Do you think that one of those scenarios would get you a better result than others would? Any ideas? I'll tell you which one. I'll tell you what my answer was at the end. But do you have any ideas of, do you think it would be more effective for learners in general to be helping a character or be fighting against a character? I'm getting a lot of silence now. So I'm going to tell you fighting against. Okay, and I'm going to tell you that the answer I gave was, it depends. And it depends on my audience. It depends on, is this an audience that is very competitive? Then yeah, I want to fight the bad guy. If it's an audience of people who maybe aren't as competent with whatever it is I'm teaching them and they're a little nervous about it, then helping the good guy might be the better answer, because it might encourage them, like, oh, okay, I'm helping. It might sort of give them a little more support in some ways. So again, always go back to your audience and how whatever you're designing would work for them and affect them. And what we did today would really fall into the mechanics category in terms of not game mechanics, but this is where you start thinking about, what are all the resources I have? How can I use them in the best way to get that audience to those goals? So again, we're thinking about the bullseye. We're trying to get people to the bullseye. So the mechanics are all the pieces of the learning engine. So think about yourself as a mechanic. You're putting it together and you're driving them to the goal. So that's the mechanics piece. And then you always need to consider the overall experience that this is happening in. There's a context it's happening in. There's an environment. There's organizational culture. There's all these different pieces that you need to think of. And you need to make sure it all works together, and that you haven't just put pieces in there to be fun, that you haven't just thrown in extra stuff that doesn't need to be there. So the experience as a whole has to work and hold it all together like our goal. So just to wrap up, because you all have been super awesome today, I would love for you to just have these 4 takeaways. And if you had an aha moment or a takeaway you want to share with the group, please put that in the chat now. But please, I encourage you to continue to find some time to practice your creativity. Explore new tools before you need them. Don't wait. Go back and debrief things whenever you can. Take a few minutes to think about other ways that things could have happened, and also start to make those backup plans so that you're more prepared. And if something has to shift really quickly, you kind of have your plans in place. Okay, so I thank you for playing along. As promised, if you go to that website, you'll just put in your name and it will spit back to you a bunch of resources. It'll give you some gamification information. It'll also give you links to some other talks I've done around similar topics that you might find helpful. And with that, I'm going to pitch it back to Lisa Ann, because I know she's got some things to wrap up here at the end.
Okay. Maybe if you could just throw that back up there. I'm going to put it in the chat window what that website was. So if anybody
done that.
Didn't get a chance, I'm going to just type it in there.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I meant to do that.
No problem. Okay. Just typing it as we speak. And then what I'm going to next do is get our survey out there for our members. So you could tell us how today's session went. Before I do that, and I think I got the website here, it's gettalk.at/ATDCFL Macgyver, correct?
That's it.
Okay, I think I got it all there. Great. Is there anybody who has any questions they want to throw at Valary at this time? Oh, Patty says sometimes she feels like she's the only one struggling, but this session really helped her to see she's not the only one. So that's a huge help.
Yay.
Okay, great. All right. While you guys are thinking, if you have any other questions, I'm actually going to be putting on the chat window our survey. If you could please take a moment to fill out that survey. It's a very quick one. Just let us know what you thought about today's session, any feedback you have. And Valary's email address is up there. I guess if they have questions, can they follow up with an email to you, Valary?
Absolutely. They can contact me anywhere.
Great. All
And
right.
please connect
So,
with me. Connect with me anyway, even if you don't have a question.
yeah, a lot of really positive feedback coming back. People saying it was really great. Thank you so much. Very helpful, useful, especially very relevant given the world we're in right now. So I think that is it. I think we're going to wrap it up. I thank you so very much, Valerie, for joining us today and giving us all this insight. It was really useful. I took a lot of notes. So I thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
All right. And everyone, thank you again for joining us. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care.
Bye.